Big Boom at Nasu Highland in Japan is probably one of the most underrated roller coasters in the entire world. And I say underrated because absolutely no one talks about this ride. In fact, I'm going to guess that a lot of people watching this video probably didn't even know it existed. But let me tell you, this ride is amazing for one reason only, and it is that first drop. Unbelievable. So this is going to be my full in-depth review. I'm going to discuss my thoughts on the entire ride and give you a breakdown on what you can expect if you go to ride this thing. Now, the first thing I really want to mention before I get into my thoughts is that before I rode this thing, I knew pretty much nothing about it. I had heard about it, but I didn't know the layout. I didn't know what to expect, and so I had the element of surprise to my advantage. Hence, when I walked up to this thing for the first time and saw the first drop, I was in shock. It looked like the steel version of El Toro's first drop. And spoiler alert, that's pretty much what it is. And what's even more impressive is the fact that it does it in a shorter height. This thing is 126 feet tall, and we don't know the actual angle of descent. It never was released, so I'm going to take a guess and say it's probably around 70 degrees, maybe in the low 80s at max. I would actually be really interested in finding out what the specific angle is, but unless someone has like a giant protractor, I don't think that's going to happen. And with the first drop like that, you'd probably expect the rest of the ride to be just as insane, but that's the thing, it's not. It's a really strange layout, and it is a short ride. There's really only 3 elements on this coaster, maybe 4. Either way, there's not a whole lot to it. When you depart the station, you go up what is probably the slowest lift hill I have ever seen in my entire life. It took almost 2 minutes to get to the top from the moment you leave the station. That is ridiculous. I have no idea why it is that slow. I guess they probably just don't have a very powerful motor, so it can't speed it up. But it is just very strange. If there is an advantage to it, I mean, it gives you a long time to take in the view. The view, once you actually crest over that top and you kind of go into this U-turn, the view up there is amazing. Gives you a perspective of not only the park, but the surrounding area. One of my favorite moments from my visit to Nasu Highland was being on Big Boom and looking out and seeing a train go around on the red coaster, camel coaster, and lo and behold, on that train are a bunch of friends of ours from that same trip that I went on. And so I'm here on Big Boom waving at them, and they're going around their ride course waving at me. So very fun dynamic there. Really like that turnaround that of course brings you to that main drop. I'm going to guess what I'm about to say won't surprise too many people, but yeah, you're going to want to ride in the back seat on this one. The way you get pulled over is unreal because it starts off with a little bit of a gradual slope and then the pull comes. You start to descend and then you just get yanked straight down that thing. You are ejected way up there. It actually left me shocked. It left everyone in my group shocked. We couldn't believe how ridiculous this drop is. By far one of the greatest first drops in the entire world, in my opinion. Just because it is so surprising, it is so sudden, and is so powerful. So yeah, the greatest moment on the ride is immediately. But what is fun is that the next element looks straight out of an element on El Toro. I wouldn't be surprised if the beginning of El Toro was patterned after this ride, because after that main drop, you go into this giant ejector El Toro looking hill. Now, it does not give anywhere near as powerful airtime, I think, as I was expecting, because you go down a drop that amazing, you're like, wow, I bet this airtime hill is going to be as amazing. Well, I wouldn't really say that. I wish it went over the hill a bit faster. You don't come out of your seat anywhere near as much as that first drop. So I'd say the airtime hill did leave me a little underwhelmed. I mean, it's still good, but just didn't quite do it for me. What did do it for me, however, is the inversion that comes after that. Yes, I know, this ride is so weird. Literally, after that airtime hill, you then go into a vertical loop. Like, what? The best comparison I could make to this loop is a Schwarzkopf loop. Very circular, very powerful. It feels exactly like something you'd find on, like, Mindbender. Either one of them. Both of them. So what comes after that loop? Well, you rise up into a turnaround through the trees. You're actually going around at a pretty good pace. And then you drop, but here's the kicker. When you drop, there are drive tires on the side that slow you down. The brake run for this thing is not brakes, it is just drive tires. Actually, I don't even know if I'd say drive tires, it's just tires. It makes a really funky sound as it goes through that brake run. You can hear the tires squealing, and it's just so surprising because you go through all these crazy elements, this amazing ride experience, and then before you know it, you're hitting tires, and that's what slows you down into the station. So definitely a short ride experience. I wish this ride were longer. I can only imagine the other elements that they could have worked into this thing, but for what it is very fun. I rode it multiple times. Definitely ride in the back, though I did enjoy the front. I would say the airtime hill was better in the front personally, but the drop definitely not as much as the back. So that's pretty much the experience. Now you might be wondering, what are the downsides with this thing? I mean, I mentioned it's a short ride, but I just want to talk about the trains real quick because this is a very strange setup. It isn't awful, but it is definitely not great. This coaster has a lap bar and an over-the-shoulder restraint, and it's a fairly tight car. Now, I don't know what their logic is for needing a lap bar and an over-the-shoulder restraint, because I have done rides all over the world that have similar experiences to what this offers. And I know for a fact, you could do this ride with a lap bar or an over-the-shoulder restraint, but you don't need both. I guess they're just that worried about the forces on this thing. I mean, honestly, I don't blame them. That first drop is like pretty ridiculous. They probably wrote it and they're like, yeah, yikes, guys, we need to add some more restraints to this thing. I mean, the first drop does try to throw you out. So if I had to guess, that's probably the reason why it has two different restraints. And to be fair, this is also not a recent roller coaster. The thing's been operating since 1987. I highly doubt that they have gone through to update the trains since then. I am fully anticipating that these are the same trains it has been operating with since the 80s. I would love to see this thing with an updated train, but there's no way that's ever gonna happen. But I mean, hey, that's okay. I mean, the ride is so strange, but it is so good. It was definitely a favorite of mine in Japan because it was so weird. It has that amazing first drop, and it's just very memorable. I mean, from the moment you're walking up to the thing, you can hear this ride from across the park. It makes this very distinct sound as it's going around the ride course. It immediately catches your attention. So for Big Boom's final score, I'm gonna give it an 8.5 out of 10. The only thing I'd say I disliked were the trains, but even then I wouldn't say I hated them. The ride is very quirky, but nothing about the layout that I'd say is bad. I think when you get nitpicky, you say, yeah, it could be longer. But for what the ride offers, I think it very much succeeds in, because it definitely leaves an impression on you when you're walking off. So that's gonna do it for this review of Big Boom at Nasu Highland. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you're one of the people that's ridden this thing, if you agree with my thoughts, and if you'd never heard of this ride before, I hope that I put this ride on your radar and maybe even your bucket list of something you eventually want to do one day. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. You can stay tuned for more coaster reviews here at Coaster Studios, and I'll see you guys next time.